Will Jim Knowles be coaching at Ohio State, or is Oklahoma actually in the mix to land what I think is the best defensive coordinator in college football today? What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football 24/7, 365 days a year. And we have a raucous and roaring comment section. And I would like you to participate, along with subscribing and ringing the bell, where you can make sure you don't miss any of the episodes that we upload here, and join our 130,000 community members here as we talk about this question. Is Jim Knowles going to coach at Oklahoma? And why should he stay at Ohio State? Why should he perhaps think about going to Oklahoma? Let me know in the comments below. Nobody's been more plugged in on this than Kerry Murdoch at Sooner Scoop. Kerry, who has been covering OU football for damn near 25 years at this point, and was once a man that I worked for. Like, my first job out of the Oklahoman was covering men's basketball and OU football with Kerry. Kerry has been sourced up forever. I mean, it's really him. It's him, guys. So if Murdoch says that he's got something or doesn't have something, then you could probably take that to the bank. That said, Kerry has also been really, really clear about there being mutual interest here. And when I go and ask questions about this on both sides, Ohio State, Oklahoma, I can get a lot of different answers, right? The fact of the matter is, let's start with what we know. Jim Knowles is still the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and Ohio State just won the national championship. First national championship since 2014, and it has been a religious experience for many Buckeyes fans, to say nothing of what it has meant to Ryan Day. And I don't think they get this done without Jim Knowles coordinating that defense. As a matter of fact, it was the bugaboo for Ryan Day, basically all save last year. Since losing Chase Young and them in 2019, right? You've seen them try to figure this thing out, try to do it with Kerry Combs. It didn't work out. You go get Jim Knowles, and you know year one is going to be an adjustment period because that defense, for whatever reason, is just difficult for players to pick up and implement. But by year two, it's point and shoot, right? It is click, fire. It is see thing, hit thing. And one of the ways in which we got to see Jim Knowles grow through 2024 was watching a defense that he had laid out to try to make it simple for the players to get after it and go, and rely on, we are more talented on defense than you are on offense, and we don't need to disguise what we're doing, and we don't need to blitz. We can read and react. We can meet you where you think you're going to be and make a play. That wasn't true when they faced real class competition. The first would be in Oregon, right? Oregon was able to exploit Jim Knowles' defense in ways that we hadn't seen all season long, scoring 32 points and really scoring more than more than anybody else had scored on Ohio State and would score on Ohio State. Ryan Day, Larry Johnson, all those guys get together. They come to an understanding about what needs to happen, and mostly they need to start acting like they got to go win a football game. Like, we know what the moniker has been for this team. We know about the money. We know about the talent. We know about the guys they had returning. And I think one of the things that was holding Ohio State back until it got into the playoff is trying to hide the toys, trying not to show too much, trying to do just enough to go win the football game without having to unleash your entire arsenal. They started doing that on the defense, and then they started getting home, right? They started getting tackles for loss. They started getting sacks. And then offensively, it became much clearer that, hey, we've got Jeremiah Smith, and they don't. Let's throw him the football. We've got Emeka Egbuka, and they don't. Let's throw him the football. We've got Quinshon Judkins, and they don't. Let's let that man run through people. I mean, Quinshon Judkins, the last 4 games of the year, had been running like Alvin Mack talks, okay? It was a thing to behold, even as the offensive line took 2 significant injuries to the starters. Seth McLaughlin at center, Josh Simmons at left tackle. You're playing 3 guards to one side, and not all of them are your best guards, okay? Now you're looking at a defense that paid a lot of money, albeit, to get players that were going to go to the NFL to return. Guys like Denzel Burke, guys like Jack Sawyer, guys like JT Tuimoloau, guys like Cody Simon. And then you're adding guys like Lathan Ransom, who returns, but also adding guys like Caleb Downs, right? Jordan Hancock, guy that returns, but also was your best slot corner and was really great in that position. All after Jim Knowles had shown them what it was going to be and then adapted the defense to the personnel as opposed to the personnel playing within the defense. We know this because both Cody Simon and Caleb Downs mostly were playing in the middle of the defense. Like Cody Simon's playing middle linebacker. That's what you do. Caleb Downs was more or less a roaming terror. If he was lined up over the top of you, probably were thinking you're going to get the ball, he's going to shuck you. And there were little things that he did that were just great football plays. He would be able to shuck off crackbacks and then go make a tackle. He can make a play on the ball. He was great in run coverage. He was great in one-on-one situations. He's great sideline to sideline. He, as many people have liked to say over the last few years, has been an eraser for every defense he's been a part of. Alabama as a freshman, and now Ohio State as a sophomore. He'll go into this season, I think, as a defensive Heisman candidate, which ain't saying that much because we ain't never going to give no Heisman trophy to no defensive player. I think that's ridiculous, but that's beside the point. Caleb Downs is one of the best players in all of college football. One of the ways in which I think a Jim Knowles would fit at Oklahoma is Brent Venables is very much familiar with that style of defense. He had Isaiah Simmons, who I called a destroyer of worlds, and it got picked up in such a way that even the folks at Clemson were having me voice over the Isaiah Simmons highlights because he was playing the kind of role that Caleb Downs played at Ohio State. You can have that kind of a player at Oklahoma and did, for a couple of years there. Deshaun McCullough was great in that cheetah role. That's what that cheetah role is supposed to be. I think when we start naming it, it loses its function. Everybody understands who it is. Everybody understands what that guy's going to do. He's going to play some linebacker. He's going to play some box safety. He's going to be an edge rusher. Cool, bet. I don't need you to say all that. I don't need you to tell everybody that the best player on the football team is going to be given this moniker and they need to go block him. I don't think that's a great way to play defense, but that's just me. I also know that Venables made his bones as a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma and then at Clemson and is a defensive-minded coach. That is why hiring a guy like Jim Knowles, pursuing a guy like Jim Knowles is also interesting to me because perhaps it's as simple as Jim Knowles wants to see what other ideas he can get from a guy like Jim Knowles who plays a defense that's similar to the one that he wants to play, and that's two of the best defensive minds in all of college football. It hasn't gone as well as we had hoped for Brent Venables at Oklahoma. After being hired, he's had two of the only three losing seasons that Oklahoma's had since 1998. It's not a good look. He's also had a 10-win season in there, but that was when the offense was humming. And frankly, when he had more controls on the defense. And then Ted Roof goes to Central Florida. You hire Zach Alley. Zach Alley has since gone to West Virginia to coach for Rich Rodriguez, who he coached for at Jacksonville State. Zach Alley, who is basically raised underneath Brent Venables and only went to Jacksonville State after he got the job to be a coordinator and ends up with Brent Venables as his first coordinator at a major Power 5 and then, of course, goes to West Virginia. The long story about it is that Oklahoma's defense was not great last year, but it was good from time to time. Really what held Oklahoma back was the quarterbacks and the injuries. That's got nothing to do with the defense. That's got everything to do with developing a quarterback, having a great play caller at quarterback as opposed to your good buddy Seth, and having a strength and conditioning program that keeps guys healthy. Like, I've been loud about this particular point. There's no reason Oklahoma should have been as injured as it was last year. And it's real hard to win football games if you don't have your full assortment of players, especially if your depth is not as deep as you think it is. Even Ohio State suffered significant injuries. Notre Dame suffered significant injuries. A lot of teams had significant injuries at quarterback, but Oklahoma and Michigan were so terrible at the quarterback position that it was really difficult to focus on anything else. Even as Michigan ends up going for an 8-win season in Sharon Moore's year one with a win against the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes and a win against Alabama and Caleb DeBoer. Say something of another guy who might be feeling a little bit hot. Not as hot as it is for Brent Venables, but just a little bit hot after the season that you had to end the season. Like, you take this loss to a losing Oklahoma team at home, on the road at Oklahoma, and then you take this loss to a Michigan team that you probably should have beaten like a drum when Jalen Milroe is playing. And then add insult to injury for Alabama. Justin Haynes is transferring from Alabama to Michigan. Oklahoma has not hired a defensive coordinator. There are some of us that believe that's probably for the best, because if Jim Knowles wants the job, give him the job. Give him the job. And there seems to be, as Kerry alluded to, mutual interest, but it's not really gone much farther than that. The man was going to coach through the national championship game. We knew that. And then we'll see, right? You're going to celebrate this. You're going to have a good time. And then you're probably going to have a sit down with your head coach, have a sit down with your athletic director and talk about what you want. And as far as, making it cool for you to stay at Ohio State. This is how contract extensions happen. This is when they happen. This is when you try to go lock up your guys, you're going to try to run this back. And all indications are that's exactly what Ohio State's going to do, even as they're losing a ton, particularly on that defense. And that's going to be interesting. He knows better than anybody else what he has coming up. And if he thinks he has coming up, there's no reason to go anywhere. But a place like Oklahoma, where I understand that many of y'all be on the WAGs patrol. I don't really like being on the WAGs patrol because once you start talking about other people's girls, boys, their significant others, I think we're invading a level of privacy that I just don't want to get to. I really don't. Me going through a really bad divorce, second divorce in 10 years, it ain't something I really want to talk about and share or have it being an influence in my position. All right. That said, his wife seems to be from Oklahoma. I don't think that's that big a deal. I think that what's going to be a big deal is there something for Jim Knowles to do at Oklahoma? Is there something he really wants? And is there something that Brent Venables is going to allow for? If it doesn't go that way, it's real easy for me to see Brent Venables calling the defense and perhaps hiring a guy like Wes Goodwin to, as Kerry put it, be a linebackers coach. That makes sense to me. I don't know that you would want to have anybody else calling plays at this point. Brent Venables knows better than anybody else. He is up against the wall, and he's got to get something done. And if Jim Knowles helps him get it done, by all means. If not, go call the plays yourself. Everybody else on the Oklahoma side of things is going to be fine with this either way. So we'll continue to watch the Jim Knowles situation, but wanted to speak on it, seeing as we got just a little bit more to go on since the Ohio State national championship win.